Okay, take two. This is we had an unsuccessful shoot at 5:30 this afternoon. So I do apologise for those people who did make it, the 15 of you. Thank you for joining me, but due to technical errors, it wasn't successful, but thank you very much. Now, just want to start with, this is week 3, so we will get into our theme tonight, which is cultural competencies. We're looking at the 8 ways of knowing, pedagogy, and then we will be getting into our visual arts exploration. Okay. So cultural competence. So culturally competent individuals are likely to have, among other things, a strong knowledge of how their own culture shapes their attitudes, perceptions, and behaviours, and an awareness of the limited value of stereotyping. And that's what we would hope we would be supporting within the classroom, and I'm sure many of you will be. So the Early Years Learning Framework, the ELF document, explicitly supports educators to develop respectful and reciprocal relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples within their local context. So the NQS, or elements of the NQS, the National Quality Standard, requires educators to focus on reflecting on cultural diversity within the broader community or off the broader community, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Now, these Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives have been embedded within the Australian curriculum for some time now, which is, and always will be. All right. Yeah, so the aim is for us to think outside our cultural paradigm. We're able to transfer knowledge and understanding into our professional practice in an effective and respectful manner. Okay, so what is culture? So culture is the shared patterns of behaviours and interactions that are learned through socialisation. So it is a collective pattern of patterns that identify the participants of a cultural group and also distinguishing those of another group. So cultural competence is not a competency or a set of competencies. It is a genuine desire to gain understanding of and valuing of culture and identity. We do this by learning from others. So it's great that we have got so many cultures within our classrooms, because it is always a learning, we are always learning. So whilst there are a range of definitions for cultural competence, all agree that cultural competence for an individual is a personal capability comprised of attitudes, values, and beliefs that develop over time through a personal journey of learning. There's a little bit of information there for you to read. Okay, so Balnaring Preschool, they have made, as you can see, we can see the land links and the creativity. So the deconstruction and reconstruction of stories that have been passed down. And this is both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students. We go into Aboriginal pedagogy here and what they believe. So the 8 ways can be used by anyone to work with Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students. So we will be looking at the 8 ways pedagogies. I would like to draw your attention, oops. Oh, it's disappeared. No, don't worry. Okay, yeah, the framework here. So I'll get it up for you in a moment, but there are hyperlinks within this the PowerPoint that have been put onto the Leo site. But just to break down for you, the 8-way framework is described in this document. So please have a good read of it. It is the ways of knowing and being out of the dusty corners of anthropology and linguistics. So it comprises of 8 interconnected pedagogies that see teaching and learning as fundamentally holistic, non-linear, visual, kinesthetic, social, and contextualized. So as you can see, we have got a intertwining or a cyclical diagram there, and it is broken down. So these symbols represent different parts of the 8 ways of knowing framework, pedagogical framework. And the first one is story sharing. So, and as the heading says, story sharing. So this is fundamental to the 8 ways. It is not only the way Indigenous peoples keep abreast of current issues in an oral culture, but it is also the way they manage their dynamic but eternal connections to country. So those stories that have been passed down from elders, those stories that have been passed down and presented by the young back to the elders. So elders teach stories, drawing lessons from narratives to actively involve learners. Okay, so this is not a monologic, but a shared dialogue. Deconstruct, reconstruct. So this is also a holistic part of the pedagogy. It has a global orientation to learning whereby the initial focus is on the whole rather than the parts, seeing an overall meaning, purpose, and structure first, and then breaking it down into manageable chunks. So in the pedagogy, the text is initially modeled by the more knowledgeable other before the learner tries it independently. So scaffolding and then allowing the children to explore. So non-linear, according to Indigenous pedagogy, learning is not sequential, but it is continuous relational endeavour. So problems are solved laterally through association and through making connections with existing knowledge. So that prior knowledge. Okay, land links. So Aboriginal pedagogies are intensely ecological and place-based, I should say, and drawn from the living landscape within a framework. Indigenous people learning is about linking content to local land and place, and thus highly contextualised. So the links to the land, community links. So learning according to Aboriginal pedagogy is group orientated. And you will see a lot of this within the visual arts exploration of traditional and modern artists of Aboriginal and Torres Strait descent. Okay, the motivation for learning is inclusive in the community, while teaching refers to community life and values. So it is a holistic thinking approach and relational cognitive approach, and it's grounded in people and place. Okay, and then you have non-verbal. So Aboriginal pedagogy is kinesthetic, so hands-on, praxis-based learning with a strong emphasis on body, language, and silence. And then we have the learning maps. So the ways of learning is to visualize pathways of knowledge. So diagrams or visualizations are used to map out processes explicitly for the learner. So brainstorming. Symbols and images. The pedagogy uses images and metaphors to understand concepts and content. Knowledge is coded in symbols, signs, images, and metaphors, and is therefore a tool for learning and memorizing complex knowledge. It highlights Yanka Porter highlights learning maps and symbols and images pedagogies are naturally linked. One provides the structure of memory while the other provides the language of memory. Okay. All right, so I'd like you to have a good look at that document. That is on our week 3 Leo tile. So have a look and yeah, and a good read. Okay, so let's get back to our shoot. Oh, go away. Okay, so different tools for exploring the 8 ways. Each object carries and informs deep knowledge about a way of learning. So as you can see, the diagram, and then we have the process there. So to start the process, so tell a story, make a plan, think and do, draw it, take it outside, try a new way, watch first, then do, share it with others. And if you have a look at, where is it? The Word document here, it gives you a good template for how you embed the 8 ways of learning and embed the 8 ways to start the process. Okay, so tell a story. We connect through the stories we share. Story sharing. So approaching learning through narrative. So how can we be inspired by the process rather than trying to recreate? Ideas to incorporate the process, and then make a plan. We picture our pathways of knowledge, learning maps, explicitly mapping, visualizing processes. So this could be done as a whole group or small groups. Think and do. We see, we think, we act, we make, and we share without words. So non-verbal, applying intrapersonal and kinesthetic skills to thinking and learning. So doing it through practice or praxis-based exploration. Draw it. We keep and share knowledge with art and objects. So symbols and images, the iconography, using images and metaphors to understand concepts and content. Take it outside. We work with lessons from land and nature. Land links, place-based learning, linking content to local land and place. And try a new way. We put different ideas together and create new knowledge. So in a non-linear sense, producing innovations and understanding by thinking laterally or combining systems. Problems are solved laterally through association and through making connections of existing knowledge. So that prior knowledge. We watch first and then we do. So we work with whole to parts, watching and then doing. So we deconstruct, we reconstruct, we model, so modeling and scaffolding. So seeing an overall meaning, purpose and structure first, and then breaking it down into chunks. So share it with others. We bring new knowledge home to help our mob. So this is the, you know, all of us. So it's bringing home that knowledge and sharing it within our community. So those community links, centering local viewpoints, applying learning for community benefit. So because holistic thinking and relational cognition are also grounded in people and place and pedagogies of deconstruct and reconstruct. So that's our template there to how we can start the process. Might be a good way to explore the process. Well, certainly would be. The template is there for you to download. Okay. Oh, go away. Okay, so back to our shoot slides. Just make sure. Okay, so we'll go through. Yep, and it's broken down a little bit further. There, 8 ways of knowing. And again. So context for learning. So the hows and whys, the student's interests, the topic within another learning area, current social needs of the class, planned excursions or activities or events, specific knowledge or set of skills needed to be taught, and then other. So, and there you have the outcomes. So feel secure, the child is going to feel secure. Children have a strong sense of identity. Children are connected with and contribute to their world, so they can negotiate roles during play, they can express opinions, participate in reciprocal relationships, and so on. Then you've got outcome 3, outcome 4, and outcome 5. Okay, so using a pretext as an initial stimulus or launching pad, so to hook them in. And it develops a process of learning and engagement and inquiry, of course, so into an idea or theme or concept that emerges within that pretext, so taking that pretext further. So it can be done through exploration, dramatic play, music, visual, media arts, dance. So pretext materials should be carefully chosen for the possibilities they offer, so it should be well thought out and well planned. It should be exciting and engaging, and can generate, learning for all students. Okay, so a good pretext raises questions for the reader and the listener. It offers open-ended possibilities. It offers dialogue, avenue for dialogue and discussion. It has an element of ambiguity. It creates strong visual images beyond the text itself, and we're actually looking at a visual arts exploration based on a pretext by Bronwyn Bancroft, and we're actually deconstructing and reconstructing our own visuals from that pretext. It offers a hook, and it offers a response. So, of course, the arts is all about making and responding. Okay, so how we learn, cultural way. So again, that's what we were looking at before. So you can have a little look at that. There is a couple of videos here I'd like you to have a look at. This one was created by a school, so it retells the story by Aboriginal children and non-Aboriginal children from the Northern Victoria region. They are the Aboriginal children are from the Bangarang people, so that region, that tribe. So so they reproduce the story in a digital format, which is just absolutely visually beautiful, and it is retold in the language of the Bangarang people, and also in an English format too. So both, like I said, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal children were involved in this, and this was told by elders and then retold by the children back to the elders. So then you've got another story here. So Why Koala Has a Stumpy Tail. Have a look at all these. I love being a Koori kid because, yeah, so have a good look at these. It's they're fantastic, and fantastic ways of exploring the stories. And it's something that you could yourself do within your classroom, recreate a story using, or retelling a story using digital claymation or papermation. All right, so let's get into our visual arts now, exploration. So I'll just download this. Okay, and just share it now. All right, so. All right, so within the visual arts, we discourage students from copying the iconography within the paintings or the artworks. So, or using Aboriginal, that's the same as using Aboriginal signs or symbols, the iconography. That's what I mean by iconography. So this not only causes great offence to Aboriginal people, but it also infringes copyright. So we try and, well, we do steer away from it. You often see that that teachers will use the generic symbols that are up on YouTube and ask the children to you know, use those symbols within their artworks. It's probably not the best idea to do that. It's good to explore those symbols, but it's great to get the children to actually to create their own symbols for their own, you know, for their own meaning, particularly if they are not from the region those symbols are representing, because, you know, different parts of Australia have got different symbols. You know, sometimes they are the same, but sometimes there's a lot that are different. So instead of doing that, you know, asking an elder to come in and explain the symbolism of that region, or you know, getting you know, a more knowledgeable person, or doing your research is quite important. Okay. So students should be encouraged to develop their own symbolic visual language when learning about the symbolic meaning in Aboriginal artworks. Be aware that non-Aboriginal people will never fully know or understand Aboriginal signs or symbols because they are not meant to. Okay. Okay, so discourage stereotypical characterisations of Aboriginal art, artists, culture or communities. Make specific reference to place, time, people and events. That's so important. So if you are exploring artworks, don't just generalise it. You know, tell the children where it comes from. It comes from the Western Australian desert region, you know, by the you know, whoever the people are who belong to that you know, those regions. So you need to be quite specific and draw attention to the rich diversity that exists within Aboriginal societies, because it's not, you cannot generalise. You can't put all Aboriginal art and Torres Strait Islander art into one bucket. You know, it just does not fit. There are so many different countries within Australia for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and we need to respect that. So we need to recognise how contemporary Aboriginal art can adapt Western art forms and new technologies and media, and still communicate cultural knowledge and express Aboriginality and Torres Strait Islander knowledge. So we have to be aware of that. So I've got a little bit of information here. So Aboriginal art, so rock paintings in particular, are looking like they are the oldest form of artwork in the world. So Indigenous culture is based on strong ties to the land and documenting the changes, the seasons, the animals and the spirits that reside in nature and in the land. It's not an ownership of land, but more a custodianship. So the stories are recorded mostly by the drawings on the rocks. At the time, they would also have been, they also body painted, and they still do today, depending on what ceremonies is happening. Sand painting, so drawing in the sand, as well as art that was part of rituals and ceremonies that invoked spirits. So they have been communicating for a very, very long time and passing down that knowledge. So Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art is regional in style. It gets its form and content from the local Aboriginal culture or Torres Strait Islander culture, which is distinctive from one area of Australia to the next. I can't stress that enough. You must do your research. So yarning circles, what are they? They are places or circles for discussion. Okay, so that's where these yarning circles, and we use yarning circles within the school, so we use that terminology because we discuss. So we share stories, they share language, and we can do that within the classroom. Bush tucker knowledge, survival knowledge, histories, and it's passed down from generation to generation. Okay, so the stories behind the Aboriginal artworks are connected to individuals through family lineages, and as groups become custodians for particular parts of cultural events and stories. So that's why, you know, it's important that we acknowledge that the stories are passed down. So there's quite a historical context. Okay, so they are, the artworks themselves, the visual artworks are often produced communally. So as artists work together on their individual paintings. So it's it can be a real community event, or, you know, of course, you're going to see individual artists who are creating their own individual storytelling within their canvases, if they are, you know, and, you know, through traditional and modern means. So you will, you know, you will see that, but often in the communities, we do have communal painters. So group cohesion and interdependence is further supported by the production of paintings. So it's that social gathering and that sharing of knowledge. So Aboriginal artworks are produced collaboratively. Some are anyway, with a group of artists sharing in telling one story on one painting, usually where all members of the group have an association with the story or map of the country being depicted. So they, you know, like we said before, it's regional. Okay, so many cultural stories relate to traditional practices. We've already talked about that. Aboriginal art practice has thrived in recent decades, and the process of retelling stories and painting the images has reinforced the values associated with traditional life in the bush. All right. So as you can see, this is a very old photo, and you can see that the symbolism within the sand was, you know, although it's ephemeral, you know, there 1 minute, probably gone the next, you know, depends on the wind and, you know, the environment, or if it's a hidden message, then they would get rid of it. So yeah, so sand artwork or sand symbolism represented some, you know, a means of communication. Okay, so have a look at this piece. This was done by a communal bunch of artists from their region in the Great Sandy Desert. It is the Wang, I hope I get this right, Wang Kachjunka people, and I've got to say it slowly. So the painting itself is a statement of connection between the traditional owners and the neighbourhood of waterhole chain. So it's representing the landforms within there. And as you can see, there's quite a number of artists, and that's what I mean by communal. So let's start getting into our own artwork. So these pre-texts are highly recommended as stimuli. You've got the colours of Australia, shapes of Australia, patterns of Australia, because Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artwork is so rich in examples of how the elements and principles work together. You know, you've got repetitive patterns, you've got a beautiful repetition of colour and shape, you've got a beautiful harmonious focus on colour, there's a beautiful balance within. And I think, you know, Bronwyn Bancroft's books, I highly recommend them because they are so enriched in colour, shapes and patterning and repetition. So they cover all the elements. So, and you're also embedding the beautiful landscapes of Australia. You're embedding the traditional artworks as well as the modern artworks of an Aboriginal artist. Okay, so the illustrations are inspirational and they open a world of visual and oral literacies. So there's a repetition of shapes, lines, colours, the patterns representing many landforms, fauna and flora, of course, line creating movement and rhythm, and very stylised illustrations here, modern stylised illustrations. The visible texture exploring the use of line, colour and shape is predominant. And then you've got irregular and regular shape exploration. So there's a lot to talk about when you do deconstruct and reconstruct these illustrations and the artworks within. So how do we extend this exploration of illustration and text? So the resources you need are paper, coloured pencils, markers, watercolour paints, thick permanent marker. Now, the prior discussion for this within the classroom you would be encouraging students to discuss the illustrations, so deconstructing the illustrations and asking the children to discuss you know, what patterns they see, what repetition they see. So everything I mentioned about the elements and principles. Discuss the colours, textures, sizes, shapes. Ask questions. So what are patterns? You know, so get them if you're coming from an early childhood realm, then getting those, the little ones to actually discuss what patterns are. How can we create patterns with our shapes? What sort of lines can we create within our composition? We can create, you know, repetitive lines. We can create repetitive patterns, repetitive shapes, repetitive colours. So there's a lot of dialogue that you could actually do prior to actually exploring the lesson. So create a composition inspired by Bancroft's illustrations. So think about a special place in nature. Show students photos, visuals on the whiteboard or the iPads, or get them to investigate the iPads, depending on how old they are. But it's always good for them to have a look at the forms. They could take their iPads out into nature or the environment, and you could take a walk, get them to take photos, or, you know, explore the environment, taking photos on their iPads, and then they could you know, using the inspiration that they have gained from the illustrations, actually recreate look at the photo that they've taken and then recreate it in a more stylized way. It could be that you get them to explore, you know, their prior knowledge on you know, where they might have gone for their holidays or something like that, you know, where they live, might be mountainous, and what, you know, how they could represent the trees in a more stylized fashion. Because as you can see, and I'll just go back to this clip, if we look at Bronwyn Bancroft's pictures, you have got these beautiful stylized images. So the mountains there, we've got the sky is beautifully represented, you know, with the movement of shapes and lines. You've got the forest, you know, the trees here, and then you've got ocean, and of course you've got trees here too. So everything's very, very stylized. So really unpacking those illustrations first is needed. Okay, so after you have the children go into nature, or, you know, you provide them with different photos of landscapes, or you have some visuals on the whiteboard, of course, you ask the students to represent the trees, mountains, skies, rivers, and so on, the landforms, through the use of line, colour and shape. Encourage repeated lines, colours and shape, encourage pattern making, encourage colour exploration. So what I'm going to do now is, I'll just take note of this too, the connection to the curriculum. So experience belonging, knowing where and with whom you belong is an integral part of human existence. So that's directly from the ELF document. Connection to the Australian curriculum, explore ideas, experiences, observations and imagination to create visual artworks and design, including and considering ideas in artworks by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, and that's ACOBAM 106 there. So I'm going to pause this and let you explore for yourself, and come back with your painting that you might have hopefully recorded. If you do create an illustration, or not an illustration, a response to the illustrations, then can you post them onto our group forum, please? That would be fantastic if you could do that. Now I'm going to let you explore. I'm going to pause this for a moment while I get down some painting myself, and I'll come back and I'll share what I have done. Okay? All right. Just going to pause you guys for a moment. See you soon. Okay, so this is mine so far. So I really like the ocean. So my stylized portrayal of a landform is the ocean, or not a landform, but a seascape. So I'm exploring the ocean through line and pattern, and I'll continue. I'll keep on going. So I'm just doing a repetitive line to represent it. Okay, so I've continued on. So I've created the waves of the ocean, and then I've created a sun shower. Okay, so exploring landforms, exploring seascapes or forestscapes or whatever photos that you have shown the children. So those realistic photos, and asking them to actually recreate it in a stylized way. Bronwyn Bancroft uses with her illustrations is a way of actually using the visualizations further. Okay. All right. So I'll just put that down, and we'll go on to our next exploration, which is John Beck's meeting place. So this is an artwork by an artist, an Indigenous artist from Western Australia, and he's been painting for over 30 years. He currently spends his time between being in South Australia, whilst going back to his homeland in Western Australia, the desert region. So in his painting, he has depicted a very special meeting place within the Australian Western Desert, or Western Australian Desert, where he grew up. So it represents people coming together to pass on the elder stories, dance and song. So you will see various landscapes, natural features, and bush foods depicted, animal tracks depicted in this painting called Meeting Place. So I would have got you to respond in an oral discussion about the work of John Beck, but what I might do is let you respond in the come up with your answers and just respond by saying John Beck's work, and whatever you come up with answering these questions within the question forum, please. So, not the question forum, our chat forum on the online tile. So what colours has Beck used? Are they cool or warm colours? What elements have been used and how? Think about the principles of art. What principles can you recognise in this composition? Can you identify the iconography within Beck's composition? So I'd like you to answer those questions and then post your answers onto our forum discussion. Okay, so the iconography is the symbolism within this work, and as you can see, it's quite a beautiful work, very intricate. You've got a lot of different technique happening there, and it's very condensed in places. So if you can answer those questions and post them to the forum, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so let's have a look at my place, my home. So he has, John Beck has created a composition connected to where he lived, his country, his homeland. And you now will explore your own composition depicting your place, so your country, your homeland, okay, which is your local neighbourhood, your local suburb. You will have to provide information on why Australian Indigenous peoples called their homeland their country. So a little bit of research there for you. Why do Australian Indigenous peoples from different regions call it their country? Little bit of homework for you. All right, so let's get into our iconography, our exploration into iconography and symbolism. This is geared towards early childhood, but you can adapt it for upper primary, of course. I've done it throughout primary school and in a preschool setting. So it is responding to Australian Indigenous artwork, so visually though, so deconstructing it and reconstructing it. So the learning intention is to explore mark making in order to represent a gathering place. So where we meet, we're in our significant place or at where we reside. So to explore artworks by Australian Aboriginal artists, traditional, and respond to these artworks visually and orally. So we want to incite those discussions and that dialogue, of course. to explore pattern making, line, colour and shapes, and to represent the theme topic through iconography and symbolism, okay, or iconography/symbolism. Okay, so the resources you will need are watercolour paints, pens, thick and thin pens, so marker pens, or markers, pencils, paper, brushes, and artworks by Australian Indigenous artists. So if you were providing this or you were doing this task in the classroom, then you would provide the children with different artworks to deconstruct. So you might do that as a whole group, or for older classes, you might actually provide them with a piece of artwork or get them to look up artworks on their iPads and get them to deconstruct the meanings, the symbolism within, the use of the elements and principles, the use of technique. Okay, but for us today, we are foundation to year 2. We're going to have that connection to the curriculum. So we're going to explore ideas, experience, observations, and imagination to create visual artworks and design, including considering ideas in artworks by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists. We are going to use and experiment with different materials, techniques, technologies, and processes to make artworks. We are responding to visual artworks and consider where and why people make visual artworks, starting with artworks from Australia, including visual artworks by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, okay? And we have looked at John Beck's artwork here, and although we haven't been able to orally deconstruct it, hopefully you have at home, okay? And remember, post it to the forum. Okay, so what I would do is discuss and brainstorm significant landmarks within your suburb. So I would have asked you guys to discuss where people meet in our community, and this is exactly what I would ask in the classroom. And they may come up with answers such as shops, church, halls, sporting clubs, what else? Community groups, you know, such as, you know, the Girl Guides or Scouts. What else? Parks. So there's a whole lot of places that we meet. So they are our significant meeting place landmarks within our suburb. But there's also another one, which is our own houses, our own neighbourhoods, our own streets. So ask the students to draw the significant meeting places within the area they live first. So get them to draw, you know, the shops, the church, the halls, the sporting clubs first. And then you extend that to asking the students to then create symbols for those significant places they have chosen. So I'm just going to pause you there, and I'm going to create my own symbolism for a meeting place. Okay, so I'll stop the recording there, and then I'll come back. Okay, but you know, in the meantime, please think about how you would symbolize, you know, a significant meeting place in your area, such as a park or a church or the shops. Okay, how would you symbolize that if you had to break it down into some iconography? All right, I'm pausing now, and I'll see you in a bit. So this is my drawing that I have just created of a church. So now I am going to create my symbolism for that church. So what I would like to represent my church as. So I have broken down my symbol from the cross and the window and made it all in one here. So, you know, symbolism could be that I just have a cross, or, you know, a brick even, to symbolize the church. Shopping centre, think about how you would represent a shopping centre. I will have a think about that myself, so I'm going to put you on pause. And so this is my representation of my shopping centre, and I'm going to put it into a symbolic form now. Okay, so that's a symbol for my my shopping centre. So I hope you investigated quite a few meeting places within your area and drew them into symbolism, because now what we're going to do is, and this would be in another lesson because we have just explored a little bit of iconography. Now we are going to explore where we live, what is on our street. So we're talking about this to the children. So like I said, it's not going to be all in the one lesson because you want them to create you know, their idea of symbolism first, so they've got that prior knowledge before they start getting into this this segment of the activity. Okay, so what you want them to investigate is what is on their street. So they might come back with houses, roads, creeks, halls. They might, you know, of course, they're going to have trees, grass. There's a lot going on in their street. There's a lot of houses. Some of them might live in courts. Some might live on roads. Some might live in small, you know, country streets or country roads. Yeah, so a variety of places. So you're going to get them to think about their street. If they went for a walk along their street, then what would they see? And you can create a whole lot of dialogue there. So then I would get them to pretend that they're flying over their street. They're flying over their neighbourhood, and they are to draw the streets that they remember walking down, but from a bird's eye view now. Okay, because a lot of, when you refer it or you link it back to Aboriginal art, then a lot of Aboriginal art, traditional art, is from a bird's eye view, so an aerial view. So I get them to pretend that they're flying over, like birds, flying over their houses, and what would they see? And I would refer to Aboriginal art in that sense, because, you know, it can be a little bit confusing for children to see the visuals within traditional Aboriginal bird's eye view landscapes. So once they get an idea that, oh, okay, right, if I was a bird and I was flying over, then the landmarks, I can see where there are water holes. I can see where there are mountains. You know, the top of the mountain is in a circular, you know, and then small circles because it is rising up, but it's from a bird's eye view. They can see the tracks. They can see the significant meeting places like the Bora rings. They can see the significant, you know, they can see the connection to land through bush tucker and other things, whatever the artist has done. But in John Beck's painting, we can see that land link. All right, so now I'm going to pause again, but I want you to think about, so close your eyes and think about you flying over your neighbourhood, and you're going to use your prior knowledge of actually driving or walking down your street and around your corner, and you're going to depict all those things from a bird's eye view. So what shapes would you see? How could you represent bridges? How could you represent roads? How could you represent streets? How could you represent a roundabout or train tracks? Now you're not replicating any of the Indigenous artworks that we have seen, but you are gaining inspiration from them, okay? Particularly the traditional artworks. Okay, so I'm going to leave you be. I want you to start thinking about those lines, about that aerial view of your neighbourhood, and I will come back to you in a moment with what I have come up with my neighbourhood, within my neighbourhood, how I'm representing it, okay? So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so this is mine so far. This is my neighbourhood, pretty condensed. I've got some parkland in there. I've included some railway tracks. I've included lots and lots of houses and lots of line work there with my streets and my roads and the court that is there at the end of my street. I am now going to, you can do a lot more to this, but anyway, this is what I've come up with. I'm now going to paint the background of the composition. So I'm going to paint around these forms now. I could use soft pastels. I could use highly pigmented paints. I could use paint pens. There's a number, any sort of medium to, sort of finish off this artwork. So, and then from there, I'm going to paint it first, and then from there, I am going to then, whilst it's drying, I am then going to ask some questions. So I will be back in a moment. I'm just going to go and paint mine and then come back. Okay, so I'll see you in a moment with my artwork. Okay, so that's fine so far. I've created mine with a lot of diverse colours because my neighbourhood is very diverse. We have got a number of cultures within my neighbourhood, well, a number of people from different cultures, I should say, and a lot of diversity within my neighbourhood. So a lot of new and old buildings, and I think it's just a very happy neighbourhood, a very community-minded neighbourhood. So that's why I have created a rainbow effect. So now I'm going to allow that to dry, and I'm going to ask you some questions now. So leave your paintings down now and let them dry, because we're going to come back to those. But I would like us to, if we were on a mat and we were together, then I would have us in a circle, so a yarning circle, to discuss our country artwork on the following slide. So I'm allowing the children's paintings to dry on the table. So I'm allowing your paintings to dry, and we are going to discuss how the artist has depicted the symbolism, so the traditional symbolism within the artwork that has been created. So let's have a look. So I want you to think about why do you think the artist has used circles within circles? So let's have a little look. So as you can see, we have the circles here. So these represent, so thinking about the bird's eye view of the landforms, there's a lot that is being represented within this artwork. And, you know, although we've got meeting places within, because we have got a track, you know, coming through, so they could be water holes, they could be borings, they could be places of where people meet. Of course, all these places are where we meet, because you know, if we were going down to the water holes, you know, at my local park, then I would meet up with some people, you know, and perhaps have a picnic or just meet up with people in general when we are feeding the turtles and things like that. So you have to think that these traditional artworks are artworks that represent, you know, either a story or a story about their country, so, and their landforms. Okay, so think about that. Why do you think the artist has used circles within circles to represent the mountain? What can you see in the painting? Talk about the elements and principles. So let's have a look here. What can you see within here, the elements and principles? So think about, you know, I'm not even going to tell you. I want you to think about the elements of visual arts. You should know them by now, and the principles of visual arts and how they are working in unison. Now, within the classroom, this would be an enriched visual literacy dialogue or discussion. So has the artist created movement? Let's have a look. Is there movement? Can you see movement? What are your thoughts about the colours and shapes used? What do you think the colours are representing? So where in Australia would this be? Possibly. Ask the students to think about the comparisons between their artwork and our country painting. So are there any are there any lost the word. Are there any similarities, or what are the differences? Now, you will come up with a lot more questions, I'm sure, about this painting. I'm sure you know, try and get some sort of understanding of that bird's eye view concept. What would this be? Could it be rocky formations? Could some of these be trees? Could these be, you know, different sands? So think about the lines, think about the dots, think about the condensed areas of different colour. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we're going to pick up our painting again, so hopefully it's dry, and we are going to continue with our adding to our composition, adding some pattern making. So that's mine so far, and now I am going to add some repetition, more repetition, and pattern making over my colour. So I'll just I'll just pause this for a moment and let you have a bit of an exploration with pattern and pattern making within the shapes and pattern making between lines. So yeah, we'll see what we come back with. Okay, so that's my pattern making within my painting. So it's an ever evolving exploration. So painting and exploration of mixed media, and that's my own iconography, symbolism of my significant meeting place, which is my house and my neighbourhood. So my immediate belonging, okay, and being. All right, so let's move on. All right, so it is important to respond orally, written and visually through discussions, technique, exploration of medium, technique and exploration of medium, and of course, that results in our compositions. All right, so now let's have a look at printmaking. This regional piece of artwork comes from far north Queensland by Zurumai Kurasan Yelpak. The medium is printmaking ink, so that's what's used here. The technique is printmaking. The focus elements are line, form, shape, size, and texture. The focus principles, repetition, balance, movement, rhythm. And the curriculum connection, explore ideas and practices used by artists, including practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists to represent different views, beliefs, and opinions. So printmaking, think about the native animals, so animals native to Australia or living in your region. Gain inspiration from the lino block print. Of course, we wouldn't be doing a lino block print in early childhood because it's, you know, a little bit dangerous with the cutting tools. They're quite sharp, but we could use printmaking foam. So this is printmaking foam. I think I showed you this last week. It's got a little, when you carve into the foam, it makes an indentation within the foam. You can purchase this at any art shop. It's quite cheap. But I'll show you how it is used in a moment. There's these two. These are, you can use these with pencils and they create a fine line. I like to use pens, so ballpoint pens for this, because the children can quite easily etch a line into the printing plate, which is, you know, it's quite hard, but it's not, you know, they're not cutting into it, they're actually drawing on it to create the indentation. So this stuff's great. You can find this at any art shop too, or art supplies, so they're great. How we would start is we would look how the artist has used lines to represent the animals, and in this case they are hammerhead sharks, because it is far north Queensland. So the island, the island is surrounded by water. So he has depicted a local species within his print making, and you can see some a school of fish, look like trevally or something like that. I love fishing. And then a lot of beautiful movement created by his line work. So absolutely beautiful. So a lot of deconstruction can be had with this one or made with this one. So a lot of dialogue, a lot of good visual literacies could be produced. So let's have a little look. We could do it in the monoprint, using the monoprint technique. Now, the monoprint technique is one where we use a plate. So I will just give you an example here. And I'm pretty sure I have, but anyway. All right, so I need some more paint. Where did I put my paint? Okay, so I'll put some more black on this because I want to do a black print. I want to etch in black or brown. I think it's black. Okay, so anyway, dark. All right, so just spreading that paint over the plate. And I'm using a soft paintbrush tonight. On Monday night, I used a harsh brush stroke on this. A harsh bristled brush, and it made a lot of texture. So tonight, for you guys, I'm using a very soft paintbrush. Now I'm going to etch in my species, so I'm thinking, I've got lots of ibises, so I might do an ibis. All right, but you know, if you guys were online, we would discuss the many wildlife, many species that might be in your neighbourhoods. It would have been really interesting actually to know, because you quite diverse crowd, come from all over Australia. Okay, so this is my ibis. I hope I've done it justice. All right, so if you can see, I've etched in my ibis there. Now I'm going to lay my paper on top. So I'll just do it with the back of the church. Oh, I might need to cut it. Okay, so I'm going to lay the paper and just give it a bit of a pat. So any flat surface, and I think I have talked about this, but you know, even the laminating machine, you know, the excess laminating plastic, grab that stuff because it's great to make individual plates, etching plates for monoprinting. Oh gosh, I hope this works. I think I've done too thick of paint. So you can barely see the bird there. So what I'm going to do is, so no, monoprinting is, it just means simply one print, but I'm going to do another one. No two prints are ever the same. So that's why it just means one. So I'm just going to use this paint again. As you can see, I'll just stand up. As you can see, etching in with the back of my paintbrush, but you can use anything. I might do some swirly lines so I get a nice pattern making. So representing the bird flying, using line. Not really. So I'm just quickly doing this for you guys. All right. Okay. So as you can see, got quite a nice yeah, that's a nice thickness of paint. The other was a little bit too thick, so it is trial and error, and it's a good exploration for the kids. So if they didn't get it right the first time, then tell them not to give up, and you guys don't give up either. And problem solve. You know, why didn't it work out? Well, mine was way too thick, so I should have made it a little bit thinner. Maybe I'm not, you know, before I was pressing a little bit too hard on my piece of paper. I'm just going to have a little look here. Oh, yes, I think that's good. All right, so I'm pulling it off now to reveal my bird. And I hope you can see my iris. So, and that's a mono print. So have a little play around with mono printing and see how you go. You know, you might want to post that too and put it up. Okay, so that's using acrylic paint, of course. You can use the, you know, like provide the children with cotton buds. I know cotton buds are a bit of a not so good for the environment, but you could make your own cotton buds out of material. Yeah, material buds. You could put some material on the back of a paintbrush if you wish. You know, anything that etches in a line. Okay, you can play around with pattern making there. Okay, or you can use the styrofoam printing foam. Okay, so just there's some directions here. So produce the block by simply pressing lines and shapes into the special soft print foam surface using a 4B. Ink the printing foam surface with, you know, any water-based printing ink or paint. You can use a foam roller if you wish. Carefully lay a sheet of paper over the ink surface and rub all over with a clean hard roller, which we call a barren. Peel off the print, but if you don't have that, I like the students to use their fingers because you're building up fine motor. Peel off the print slowly, repeat the inking and rubbing for as many prints as you want, because these are, you can get repetitive. So, you know, like this one print, I could get, you know, 100 prints off. So it's there's a bit of a machine happening, a bit of a factory happening. So what I'll do is I'll paint this one and I'll just show you what it looks like painted. Oh, now I'm not putting enough on. There's one or the other. I'll add a little tiny bit of water to my mixture. Hopefully it doesn't dry. Now this has been pre-done, but you know, exploring again pattern making, aerial views. I love exploring the Torres Strait artworks because very different from the original artworks, Australian Aboriginal artworks, because of region, of course. So that's why we cannot pigeonhole these artworks, our First Peoples artworks, because they're different, very different in region. Okay, let's see how we go. So I've painted my foam here with acrylic paint. Okay, now foam print is the styrofoam. So just like those you get at the fruit markets, your, I don't know, pears and apples are on, and then you've got plastic over them, or mushrooms. Keep all those because they can be used as prints. Just rubbing right now, so a nice even rub. Okay, and I'm going to pull it off to reveal a lovely print. So nothing to do with Australian Indigenous artwork, but just to give you an example, because it was already done. So I had that pre-made, which is great. Probably should have created my own symbolism on that piece, just to be in context with the the theme tonight and the topic tonight. Topic, I should say. Yeah, so that's my final print. So that's, have a bit of an exploration with foam printing. If you can get your hands on some styrofoam, have a little go at that. I am going to say good night, and I do apologise to those people who did turn up to the tutorial this afternoon, and I had so much I had so many problems with my computers, 2 computers, and the internet here, because today is the Echo Show Day in Brisbane. So I am not on campus tonight. I am at home. So I'm in my office tonight. And yeah, who would have thought, huh? But anyway, we got there in the end. So this is, yeah, this is it. So I'm very apologetic to those students who did turn up tonight. But the recording is here, and I hope you have some fun with the your exploration of the artworks tonight and the topic. All right, good night, and thank you for attending. All right, oh, thank you for reviewing this video. I'm going to put it up on YouTube now. So thank you and good night. Bye. I'll see you next week.